G'day guys, Max here from Evidence-Based Football Manager. Today we're going to talk about how training works in Football Manager. This video is kind of similar to my previous video where I talked about how wonderkids develop in Football Manager, but today's video is focused more on the training aspect of the game, and I'm trying to find out how the different factors in the game affect a player's growth in Football Manager in response to training. The ultimate aim of this video is to find the most effective way to train your players in Football Manager and maximize the potential of your players. This is going to be quite a big topic, so I'm actually going to split this into 3 separate videos, today's video being part 1. So let me show you how I set up the experiment for this research. So I use the game editor to set up a custom league where there is no match scheduled for an entire season. So I'll just show you this screen here. So I'm in charge of Leeds United, and if I go into the training schedule, you can see that there's just this one match scheduled here against Wolves at the start, but after that there's no match for the rest of the season, which allows me to fill up my training calendar with whatever training schedule that I want my team to follow. I also use the game editor to create 12 clone players with a current ability rating of 100 and a potential ability rating of 200. So 5 of these guys are strikers, 5 of them are defenders, and 2 of them are goalkeepers. You'll notice that all of these players are North Koreans by nationality. This prevents these guys from going away on international duties because for some reason in Football Manager 22, North Korea does not participate in any international competition in the game. There are 4 player attributes that I believe to have an influence on a player's training performance in Football Manager, and that is professionalism, ambition, determination, and morale. So with these 12 clone players, I set professionalism, ambition, and determination as 20 out of 20 to begin with. And I set all player morales to OK, which is right in the middle of this list of possible morales for these players. So these are just the initial settings that I will use for my experiments, but I will be playing around with these values later on in order to find out how these attributes affect a player's training performance in Football Manager. Next, I'll just show you how I set up my coaching staff. So there are 6 members in the senior coaching team. So the manager, which is myself, the assistant manager, 1 goalkeeping coach, 1 fitness coach, and 2 regular coaches. As you can see, their coaching attributes are all set as 20 out of 20 to begin with. And I'll just show you the club facilities. So again, I used the editor and I changed the club training facilities to 20 out of 20. So Leeds United now has state-of-the-art training facilities. Now, the first thing I want to do is to find out how much players grow when they perform 0 training. So what I do is I go into this training page here, and you can see that I've made the calendar completely empty for the whole season. So my players will be doing no training for an entire season, as well as not playing any football matches. So here we go. I'm just going to go on a holiday until the 30th of April when the season ends. So here we are at the end of the season, and you can see if I go into the players page here, the CA ratings of these players have gone up. Remember, these CA values were all 100 at the start of the season, and they have all grown, even though these players didn't do any training or play in a football match for the whole year. So I recorded these CA values into an Excel spreadsheet, like you can see here. So I repeated the same simulation multiple times as I changed the age of these players, all the way from 15 to 30. And after each simulation, I recorded the change in CA values into this Excel table. You can see every time I change the age of the players, I perform the same simulation 2 times just to make my results a bit more reliable. Next, what I did was I conducted another set of simulations where the players did engage in team training. So if you have a look here, I've set up quite a generic looking training schedule consisting of 5 overall and 5 outfield training sessions. So I filled up the entire season with this training schedule, but the players are still not playing any matches for the whole season. So I conducted the simulation with these settings, again, varying the age of the players, and I recorded the results into an Excel table, as you can see here. After that, what I wanted to do was to find out how match appearances affect a player's growth in Football Manager. So this time, I used the editor to edit the league structure again. So I added 18 other teams into the league. 9 of these teams are from the English Sky Bet League 2, and 9 of these teams are from the English Vanarama National League. I deliberately chose teams from the lower leagues because remember, the 12 clone players that I'm using for my experiments, they have a CA rating of 100, which is not very high. So if I get them to play against other top tier clubs, my team will be losing all the time, which will affect the morale of the players. So that's why I made my team play against these lower league teams. So first I conducted simulations where the players are playing 36 league matches throughout the season against the 18 teams that I've added, but the players are still not doing any training during the season. After that, I conducted another set of experiments where the players are playing the same 36 league matches, and on top of that, they are asked to engage in team training. So altogether, I conducted 4 sets of experiments today. The first experiment is when the players didn't perform any training as well as not playing any matches for the whole season. The second experiment is when the players did perform training but not playing any matches. The third set of experiments is when the players didn't do any training but they did play 36 league matches throughout the season. And the fourth set of experiments is when the players did engage in team training as well as playing in the 36 league matches. Now, going through all of these results one by one will be very boring. So what I did was I turned these results into a line graph, as you can see here, which makes it a little bit easier for us to comprehend the results. So let's have a closer look at this graph together. Okay, first let's have a look at the blue line. So this is when the players didn't do any training and didn't play any matches for the whole season. So until the age of 18, these players show a good amount of growth, a bit more than 10 CA points in a season. From 19 years of age, the amount of growth in CA starts to decline. From 23 years onwards, there's actually negative growth in CA for these players. 23 is by no means considered an old age for footballers, but when these players have no training or no match exposure, they will start declining gradually as a footballer in the game as early as 23 years of age. Next, let's have a look at the grey line. So this is when the players are playing first team league matches but not doing any training. So with the grey line, the pattern is pretty similar to the blue line, but the grey line is a little bit higher than the blue line, especially between the ages of 20 to 23, which means that match appearances definitely benefit the growth of players, and that benefit is the most pronounced between 20 to 23 years of age. However, after the age of 23, the grey line falls into the negative zone, exactly like the blue line, which means that match experience alone cannot prevent players from declining from 23 years onwards. Now, this grey line is actually a slight underrepresentation of how match appearances affect a player's growth. This is because out of the 12 players that I used for my experiments, there are always 1 or 2 players who don't get too much game time, especially one of the goalkeepers. Remember, out of the 12 players that I used for my experiments, 2 of them are goalkeepers, and since one goalkeeper can play at a time, it's usually one of the 2 goalkeepers who get most of the game time during the season, and the other goalkeeper gets very little game time, if any. So players who don't get to play will, of course, don't grow that much throughout the season. And when I calculate the average change in CA for the season, the average value will be pulled down by those 1 or 2 players who didn't grow that much during the season. So this grey line should actually be slightly higher than how it appears here, especially between 20 to 23 years of age. which I guess highlights the importance of match exposure even more during this age bracket. Next, let's have a look at the orange line here. So this is when players are doing training but not playing any football matches. So the growth in CA is the highest until the age of 18, but from 19 onwards, the rate of growth slows down. For players under the age of 18, the orange line is higher than the grey line, which means that under the age of 18, training is more important than match experience for player growth. Between 21 to 23, on the other hand, the grey line is higher than the orange line, which means that during this age bracket, match experience is more beneficial than training for player growth. From 23 years onwards, the orange line is a lot higher than compared to the blue or the grey line. So players who don't participate in training, as represented by the blue and the grey line, they will start declining from 23 years onwards, but the same kind of decline doesn't happen to players who do participate in team training, as represented by the orange line here. So I guess what's important to note here is that players over the age of 21 don't grow that much, even if they participate in training. As you can see here, the orange line, more or less approaches a zero after the age of 21. But that doesn't mean that training is not important for players over the age of 21. They should still train, because if they don't, then they will start having negative growth in CA after they turn 23, as you can see from this blue and the grey lines. Lastly, let's have a look at the yellow line. So this is when players are doing training as well as playing first team football throughout a season. So the growth in CA is the highest for this yellow line, regardless of what age it is. So this means that if you want maximum growth out of your players, make them train as well as giving them adequate match experience, no matter what age they are. So here is a brief summary on how to manage your players depending on their age. So before the age of 18, training is the most important factor for growth, but at the same time, a little dose of match experience can stimulate the growth of your players even more. Between 18 and 21, training and match experience are of similar importance for growth. So again, try to give your players between 18 to 21 an adequate amount of first team football. Between 21 and 23, match experience is more important than training for player growth. So make sure that players in your team who are between 21 and 23, make sure that they have plenty of match exposure, and consider loaning out players who are struggling to break into your first team. From 23 onwards, player growth doesn't really happen anymore, but keep your players on the training ground nonetheless, because the lack of training will cause your players above the age of 23 to slowly lose their CA rating. Okay guys, that is it for today's video. Remember, today was just a part one of this training video series. Next time, I'll be talking about more factors that influence a player's training performance in Football Manager, including the quality of the coaching staff, the attributes of the players, and the club facility. Do subscribe to my channel so that you'll be notified of my new videos as soon as they are uploaded. So I'll see you guys next time. Cheers guys.